Hey, what's up? This is Kevin from Kevin's Barbecue Joints, and I'm really excited to bring you my interview with Jess Pryles from Hardcore Carnivore, as well as she's a brand unto herself. It's been 3 years since we last spoke, and I'll put in a link to our interview below, but so much has happened. It was the early days of her book. She only had the Hardcore Black seasoning at the time. Now it's expanded so much. So we get into a lot of stuff on this, and we also get into the fact that she's been married for a year. There's been a lot of growth in the last 3 years since we spoke. So we go over everything in her product line, everything that she's doing. We go into hunting. First off, I'll just say Jess Pryles is a badass, and if you didn't think so, after listening to this, you'll know that she's a badass, and it's pretty incredible. And her knowledge and her enthusiasm for meat and grilling and smoking and hunting, it's boundless, and meat science, and so she's going back to school for that. So we talk all about those things. If you are watching this on the YouTube side, there's about 10 minutes or so, 10, 12 minutes that's additional that'll be on the podcast version. It'll be at the beginning of that. You're not missing out if you just watch the YouTube, but there's a lot more that's on the podcast side. The Wi-Fi connection was kind of weird visually, not audio, but visually for that, so I wanted to make two versions. So YouTube a little shorter, podcast longer. I'll have links to all that below. I can't thank Jess enough for taking the time to share everything that she's been doing for the last 3 years. I know you guys are really going to enjoy this. And the Kevin's Barbecue Joints podcast and YouTube show is brought to you by Centex Smokers. The easiest way to get a hold of them is on Instagram. It's at Centex_smokers. That's CENTEX_smokers. Centex, Central Texas Smokers. They're out of Luling. It's Michael Johnson. He's been welding since he was 5 years old. He has an intimate knowledge of welding and technique and how to do things right. It's old school craftsmanship with new school technique, and he's building pits. His first pit was for Ronnie Killen. Then he did one for Mo Cason, which is just a beautiful, beautiful pit. He just finished another one for Ronnie Killen, and he's got more on the horizon. His lead time right now is 4 to 5 months, but you got to jump on that because his lead time will go out to a year very, very soon because he is that good at what he does. So check him out again at Centex Smokers. That's at Centex_smokers. And the show is brought to you also by Treaty Oak Distilling. That's treatyoakdistilling.com, where you can find out all the information about the company, get all their products, but you could also visit them at their physical location in Dripping Springs. Go to Alice's Restaurant, which is a barbecue and live fire restaurant. You can try all their spirits, try new stuff they're doing, try beer that they do, wine that they do. It's a really cool facility, great people, great product, treatyoakdistilling.com. And if you're digging these, please subscribe. That way you don't miss out. I'm doing 2 to 3 of these per week. I also have a website at kevinsbbqjoints.com with write-ups, links to all the podcast, YouTube stuff, crazy lists. Got some really cool stuff coming up on that. Then I also have a new website I'm launching very soon, so check back for that. But at the end, stay safe, stay as sane as possible, and support local restaurants, support your local barbecue joint. They need you now more than ever, and now that potentially there might be no stimulus for them at all, they need your help. Buy a gift card, do to-go, take-out, dine in if it's possible, but they definitely need your help. But also, have yourself a good week. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you.
Likewise. I can't believe it's been so long. Something happened with me when I learned to cook. It was all about the reverse sear, which is basically, people think reverse sear is only one style, but reverse sear is basically any low and slow cooking and then any high finish. So reverse sear could be a sous vide and then a cast iron sear. It could be indirect grilling, high grilling finish. It could be smoking to start and cast iron sear or grill sear to finish. Just any low and then high heat application. And the idea is that you get that perfect coast to coast doneness all the way through because you're going so slowly. So you're being really cautious with that slow cook, and then you just really quick high sear. So it took over because it was a way that a lot of people could get over their fear of buying and cooking expensive steaks at home, because the biggest hurdle for most folks is just, I don't want to ruin it. I hear that a lot from the meat producers that I work with. That was reverse sear. The problem is, because you're going so slow, it averages 1 to 2 hours. And it has to be a thick steak, so it has to be at least an inch and a half thick. So it takes 2 hours to cook a steak for dinner. But it's infallible. So it's a great way to start. But then I started naturally finding myself just wanting to build these super hot fires. So on my grill, I would dump the charcoal chimney, and instead of spreading it out, I would just keep it all concentrated. And I would always have like this super hot zone and this not so hot zone. And I was also starting, to preach in my classes that, the biggest mistake that people made, and I've certainly made it in the past as well, because you just don't realize, is that you're just not getting your pans hot enough when you're on a domestic stove, because our gas burners aren't even as hot as they are in restaurants.
That's true.
We don't have the exhaust systems that they have, so we're not prepared to smoke ourselves out of house and home. And even if you think like you can get a cast iron pan up to 350 degrees and you're like, ooh, and it might be starting to smoke, it's going to like collapse in temperature as soon as you put it in there. And it's not hot enough. So the whole concept of JKF is just keep flipping. That if you have a high enough heat source, be it grill or pan, you should be able to rotate every 30 seconds or so. And that first flip looks really underwhelming. But when you keep going, you build this incredible crust, because every time that it hits, the flame or the pan, you're rendering, you're searing, you're getting there. And because you keep moving it, you don't get that edging all the way through as if you left it to form a crust. And it works every time. And the big thing is that your steak's ready in 15 minutes instead of 2 hours. And for me, I nearly feel like reverse sear has caused people to lose the art of grilling. That it's so infallible and so easy. And I think it's also responsible for why ceramics are really, really popular, because they've been able to get hot. So you can do a sear, even with these, these pellet grills that are out, and people are having to put cast iron in them because I have a pellet grill. They're very convenient, but they're not grills.
Yes.
Like, you can do the same thing in your oven. You can put cast iron in your oven and crank it to 500 degrees, and it's going to be the exact same thing, right? So I feel like people have lost the art of cooking over flame in particular and over charcoal. And if you understand the principle of just keeping it moving, just keep flipping, just keep flipping, just keep flipping, it works on any size steak. From a thin skirt steak, and that's what I did in that video, from a thin steak to a thick sirloin steak, it just works. And I'm starting to see a lot of people tag me in their posts where they're like, oh, I've tried this method, which is funny to me because it's like not a new thing. It's been around forever and a day, but it's nice that people are reconsidering it and tagging me in it. So,
because I think that people have gotten so into the reverse sear that they're forgetting, like you said, that this is a way to cook, and it has been around since the caveman. Like that's what every dad would do, or I guess if the dad would be drinking, wouldn't pay attention and he wouldn't continue to flip. But I think it's something but it's a concept that it has been lost.
And I think that for a lot of people, like I said, if you have one of those ceramics, and I think this is why reverse sear got so popular, you can get a great crust in just a minute because your grill is at 700 degrees, which is outrageously hot. But for most folks cooking over a kettle style or a PK or whatever, your grill really doesn't get that hot. And when you only have 1 minute to do that sear, the other thing that I was seeing a lot with reverse sear was a perfectly cooked inner steak, but not always like that lovely crusty Maillard that we look for on the outside. It was just kind of like different color. Like we were so scared to overcook it that we weren't getting the best of both worlds, which is a perfect steak and the perfect sear.
That's such a smart idea. And it has been taking off for you, right? You're getting a great reaction.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of people tagged trying this out. Oh my God, it works. And the funniest thing is so many like backup comments of, my wife was thrilled that dinner was ready in 15 minutes, or I can't believe how easy this is. Like, you can still use reverse sear, but it's like, just, you're cooking on a Wednesday night. Just cook your damn steak and be done with it and enjoy it, Don't make a whole procedure out of it. It doesn't need to be that way.
For people that want to see this doesn't reside on your website. This would reside on your Instagram, right?
It is. I'm about to put it up on my website because I realize there's a big gaping hole where people are pretty looking for a JKF and it's not on there. So I've uploaded a video that's on my YouTube, my IGTV, and my Facebook page, and I constantly try and refer to it in all my social media posts too. But I'm about to upload a formal article explaining the concept and everything that we've talked about, so that if everyone's looking at what's everyone talking about with this JKF, they can at least find a source to go to, and that'll be at jesspryles.com.
Also, too, you seem to, and were you cooking game or were you hunting at all prior to your move to Texas?
No, I wasn't. I started hunting when I moved to Texas, and there is hunting in Australia. I just didn't know anyone who did. It's certainly not as prevalent as it is here. It was just such a part of Texan lifestyle, and a big deal to me when I moved was kind of experiencing all things Texan. And the other aspect was, if you're going to be a meat advocate, I think there comes a point where, like, I'd already been in slaughterhouses at the kill line, and now it was time to take the next step. And I've evolved into the type of hunter where it really is all about the meat for me. I don't go after exotics, and I don't go after trophies.
Yeah.
Like, I'm happier taking a doe than a buck because it's easier for me to process, because I process all my own venison myself. But I love it. I just look forward to it. I look forward to being in the outdoors, and I just got back from dove hunting this weekend. And
what is and it's you weren't the only one. There's a lot of people I saw that were, I guess, dove
opening
hunting.
weekend.
It just started. What
Yeah.
is that like? What's that experience like?
It's really, really hard. I find it really hard, because you can, even if you're pretty good at shooting skeet, they come out of nowhere. So my husband is like the dove slayer. He's amazing. He can just see it and go, and he's dropped to one knee and he's like firing them out of the sky. It's white wing. We shoot white winged dove, mourning dove, and you can shoot a type called Eurasian dove too. And the seasons are quite limited on some of those species. And you stand out in the field. The fields are strategic to where there's sunflowers or some kind of feed for that animal to be flying towards.
Okay.
And just pick them out of the sky, and it sounds easy, and it's really hard.
Do you have to like rustle up the foliage to make them fly, or do they just come out of the?
So they're not so quail is probably what you're thinking of, the ground dwelling birds, and the doves are naturally flying in. So you go out in the field at the times that they would be coming in to feed. So you're out there about 3:00 when they're headed to those fields near you.
Okay. I'm so naive.
Or you
I have no idea.
No, but I mean, you just think about their eating habits, right?
Yeah,
so
no,
you
makes
know
sense. Makes complete sense.
And they're just flying overhead, and then when they're finished, you can get them flying back, and it's pretty amazing. It's quite delicious. It's very challenging, but you get to be outdoors and in the sun and having fun and just. I grew up in a suburban city, so the idea of standing in this Texas field, especially now during COVID, it's very social distance because you don't want to be near any other hunters. But I think that there's few opportunities for us who live in cities and have just been kind of confined to our houses. It nearly feels like, this incredible breath of fresh air, literally, to just be out there and with space. And so it was really lovely, and Texas has a 15 bird per day limit per person.
Okay.
And with dove, you generally just take the breast because the rest of the bird's generally too small. Some people do pluck the whole thing. Good for them, because that's a chore. But
yeah, is it cleaning it? Dude, you're shooting with pellets, so there's pellets, right?
Yeah, you're shooting with shots.
Shots, but there's pellets in the meat.
Correct. Right? Generally, there's actually not. You can see it because you can obviously see the bruising, but I would say the out of all the birds I cleaned this weekend, maybe one or two had the breast meat was damaged.
I'm gonna get a lot of feedback from hunters. They'll be like, "What? You don't know any? I don't know a whole lot about, like, I've never been to a barbecue competition, nor have I ever been hunting. But I'm fascinated by both, more so hunting. But I'm just, so that's why. And so then buck hunting, like, so then you go out and kill does. Is that something you've done? Do you do that? You don't do that with bow and arrow, do you?
I don't personally. There are people who do. They love archery because it's like you have to be quieter, you have to be more skilled, you have to go in and hone your bow practice and nail it. I rifle hunt because my biggest fear is injuring an animal without downing it.
No, I know.
And you have to spend so much time getting good at archery to actually knock an animal down. And I feel like there are some amazing bow hunters, but I also feel like there's some people who just want to get into it that are maybe doing some shots where you see the animal just run off with an arrow in it. That can obviously happen with bullets too. But I hunt with a rifle. I hunt with a 6.5 Creedmoor Browning, and because I'm there for the meat. So it's not about, I love sitting in a deer blind. Here's the thing. We hunt in blinds in Texas. There are people who go out and stalk, people who are watching this in, the Pacific Northwest might be like, oh, You hunt in blinds? Ew. Like that's like the pellet grill version of barbecue, right? Because they want to go out into the wilderness and go out into public land and stalk and track and whatever. It's very common to hunt in off feeders in blinds. So there's a feeder set up about 100 yards from where your blind is. But what I love it is, it doesn't have to be one of those prison watchtower blinds. It can just be 4 pieces of plywood that you're sitting in. But you go in before sunrise and you're dead quiet and you get to just watch the sunrise without any sound. And you're so focused on watching what's coming out that you start getting in tune with like every shadow. It's just so peaceful.
Wow.
So there's a catharsis to it as well.
Yeah. No, it sounds good for the soul, and you're processing all the meat. You're not just going there just as sport. It's actually you're using the meat now. Do you process that at your house, or do you have a place that you go to process? Like, do you have a deer processing place? Or?
So most hunters, especially if you're taking a lot. So if you're going out every week, you may not process it yourself. And it's very common to find a processing place where you generally gut the deer in the field because you've got to get that out to bring the temperature down. And then you can drop the whole thing at the processor. I process myself, so I get it down into quarters. So you gut it, take the back straps out, quarter it, and put all that in an ice chest. And actually in Texas, you have to keep like proof of sex of animal until you get it to your final destination. So you'll usually take the head and the cape, which is basically the skin all together, in a separate little trash bag. And I've always wondered when I get home and dump that in the trash, like I wonder which poor like trash guy is going to accidentally open this one day. Then when I get it home, I've basically got these quarters that I can finer process. So I just do that at home because it's just like having like a deer ham. It looks like just a big ham.
Interesting. No, and when I lived in Texas for a year, I noticed all these deer processing places, and in California, that's such a foreign concept, and so
right.
I didn't know. So that you've explained so much more than I ever thought I'd know. So thank you just for this, and no, it's been informative. I wanted to just do like a catch up because it's so much time has gone by, and I wanted to see how are you coping though with COVID right now? How do you feel mentally? Do you feel, because you went out hunting, so is that a nice break? And is that?
Oh yeah. I mean, I do feel like we're all settled into a weird new normal. Like it's been so long now that it just is what it is. I miss terribly. My husband and we just had our first wedding anniversary, so we went out for dinner for the first time since March. Like we've been getting takeout, but this was the first time we're like, should we do it? If other people are doing it, should we do it? And it was so nice. It was like, oh my God, I missed this. And I didn't even think about it. So we are very, very blessed to have a business that thrived during COVID because, we're selling something that involves people cooking at home. But I know for myself, people are more, there's a little bit more engagement, not as much as when it first hit and everyone was like, oh God, tell me what to do. How can I stock my pantry?
I've never cooked before.
Right. Like, but people are still, there's a lot more home cooking happening and therefore people looking for advice, and you settle into a new normal, and we're ready for life to be going back to normal with travel and what have you. But it makes me happier than ever that I live in this state because, you can drive so many places and to so much wilderness and to so many distance locations. So you can still find little breaks within all this.
I guess you can in California, but we're still pretty locked down here, and they're just opening up. Like my hair is a little crazy. I haven't had my haircut since January. And it's like it's wild, but it's they're just opening up 25% for hair salons and barbers, and that people are cutting outside. But yesterday was 121 here in Woodland Hills. Woodland Hills was trending on Twitter because it was hotter than Death Valley, or it was like hotter than Palm Springs here. Yes, rolling blackouts and wonderful stuff. But anyways, well, because when your dog, what's your dog's name?
Ancho, and I'm gonna let her back in. She's a very spoiled little princess. She came with me from Australia, and she has multiple beds in every room of the house, and it's like I'll go out now. I'll come in now. Thanks.
I know that's,
So
I love how dogs do that, but you know what? They're so important. And also too, like, she's part of your companion during this COVID thing. She's part of the trio.
she's an emotional support animal, 100%.
How can they get a hold of everything that you're doing?
So there's two kind of websites associated with me. One is jesspryles.com, which is my site where you'll find all sorts of free recipes, guides as well, like a guide to dry aging. I do post my videos on there as well, and all the social medias. And then there's hardcorecarnivore.com, and that's where you'll find the seasonings and all the tools and paper and notebook, Pitmaster logbook that we talked about. That's all there. There are some extra recipes there too. And you can also get the stuff on Amazon too, but and a lot of fabulous retailers throughout the country. There's a dealer locator on the Hardcore Carnivore site, so you can check where your closest store is too.
And on Facebook, you have a Hardcore Carnivore site. You have an actual page that's specific to that.
Hardcore
Yes.
Carnivore on Instagram, Hardcore Carnivore on Facebook, because there are people who, and I'm fine with it, they have no idea who I am or that I'm related to the seasoning. I'm that's so cool. As long as you're enjoying it, go for it.
Is there anything coming out this year?
No, not really. We're just focused on growth right now. I've got a few things. I've got a few things in the pipeline, but it's just such a messed up year that it's really not the year to try and risk things. So we're being a little more conservative this year.
Do you have all your products online in stock? Is there anything sold out that people should know, like, or low quantities that they need to jump on?
Not really. We have most of everything. Sometimes there's a big run on things that puts us out for a little bit, but we usually get it back really quick. We blend really frequently so that things stay really, really fresh. Mm-hmm. There's probably a couple of tools more that I'm working on that you can expect to be in stock.
Cool. And then the Gerber knives, can you get those on Gerber's website as well?
Yeah, definitely. So we stock, my favorite is the Vital. It's a replaceable, especially if you're into hunting. It's basically a scalpel. So you replace the scalpel blades on it. But it's great for competition barbecue as well, because you can do that very, very precise trimming. So when you really want to square off your ribs, or if there's that little bit that you need to just trim off, it's very, very sharp and very, very precise and thin and accurate.
And those are available on their site as well as your site, right?
Correct.
Is that hat newer than, wasn't there, is that a newer hat, or am I going crazy?
Yeah, this is the newer one. This is the patch hat. We've gotten so much new stuff. We've gotten a lot of new merch and brought back some old t-shirts and kept some favorites. So yeah, take a look. I'm always trying to bring new stuff out too, and it's so weird because it's stuff that, it's like, oh, would I wear it? So it's a little selfish because if I don't wear it, I usually don't add it. But I think these ones look good.
Well, that's cool. I'll have to look again because I had so many of your products, and it's funny because we had talked about how my avatar for Skype is I'm wearing the Hardcore Carnivore shirt that I had.
The T-shirt.
From many, many years ago, and it's dirty and frayed, and I need to kind of re-up on that again. So, well, thank you so much for taking the time and for doing everything you're doing for the meat world, because it's evolving and changing, and you've stayed on top of your passion, and I think that's important to get.
Well, that's why I went back to school, right?
Well, yeah, let's talk about that lastly. Yeah, school. Are you? Oh God, have you started that? Yeah, that was like in my mind. That was like the first thing I wanted to talk about, other than you getting married.
Yeah, I've started it. I know it was weird to me. Now I'm used to it, but it was weird to me when everyone was congratulating me on getting married, because I'm like, what did I do? I just found someone who was prepared to live with me for the rest of their lives. Like, that's such an achievement. But I guess it is. But yeah, I went back to school. I'm a grad student, a meat science grad student at Iowa State. It's all online, which is very convenient, particularly now. But I basically wanted to, one thing that I think I don't get enough credit for is I know a tremendous amount behind the scenes when it comes to beef and meat. A lot of the how and why, a lot of the meat science. And there were two things that happened. One, I was kind of getting sick of asking all my meat science friends a lot of questions and wanted to actually understand the answers for myself. So I started seeking out a way, without actually going all the way back to school, because that's a little bit disruptive. Just how can I find out more? So I've already started. I'm in my first semester, and I've already learned like so much. I sit there and I go, oh, I get it. And I hated science in high school. Like, I picked all humanities in the last year of high school. You can like choose, so you get a better, I guess that'd be a SAT score equivalent here. And now I'm having to go back and look at like molecules and how they
Yeah,
bind
I don't.
and pH levels. And I'm texting my mom going, can you believe that I am doing this? She's like, you hated that stuff. I'm like, I know, but it's fascinating now. So
And
it's
it's
weird,
important to what
but
you're doing. It's so integral.
so, because you understand, like now I can explain on a cellular level why brining works. We know it works, but I didn't really get it, and now I'm like, oh, I can trace it all the way back. That's cool.
And see, that's what when I first had talked to you. Not that I'm not curious about it still, but I think I peppered you with a bunch of questions. I think you told me to get Kenji's book, and there was all these different things that because I was so fat because I still don't. I've delved so much into like the people of barbecue that I haven't gone into the science, and I think that's smart that you're going to class because Texas A&M has all that stuff. There's a lot of things I want to do, and I think a lot of people do as well. But I think that I'm excited that you're doing it. Good for you. That's huge.
Thank you.
That's
Yeah,
exciting.
it's pretty huge. It's pretty huge because I'll be, much more a fish. I feel like not only do I get to learn new stuff, but it kind of, it authenticates everything that I've
Without a
learned thus
doubt.
far as well.
And validates it within you too, because you know what you're saying
Yeah.
is the right thing. You'll hear a lot of people like I'll hear like Nick Solaris. I'll hear him talk, and I'll be like, he knows like I don't know this stuff. Like there's things that people do know, and when you talk, it's like okay, I need to go back to school. I definitely do.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff as well that I mean, this is a proper university certificate, university program. Like I had to go through admissions to get in, and it wasn't just it wasn't just one of those courses where you can just pay and get in. So it's legit, and I'm
Nice.
excited to share what I've learned.
Do you think you'll be able to go get like? Will there be a ceremony if like say COVID, the fog goes away? Will there be or that it will be an online ceremony or will be that'll be cool? Like if you could actually walk.
It's at least stage to go to Ames, Iowa. It's a certificate, not a degree, because 1 year
Yeah.
sounded better than three to me, at least to begin with. But
Go visit at least.
I plan on it. Hopefully, it'll make it feel much more academic to me. So we'll
Definitely.
try.
Well, stay safe. Like I know,
Thank you.
congrats again, even though you
Likewise.
don't need a congrats, but congrats again on getting married and going through a year. And it's exciting. It's wonderful for you, and then also on all your success because, like I said, it's been 3 years since we spoke, and you've
Crazy.
yeah your product and your brand and your knowledge has grown so much. So thank you for taking the time again,
Thank you,
uh,
Kevin. I appreciate it.
and yeah, and we'll get a beer when this all settles.
That sounds good. That sounds good to me.
Everyone needs to go get beers or get food together. And no, at least get some food. We'll do something. But have a great week and thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. All right, take care.
You bet. Thanks.